Well, hi again. We are continuing the growth and GDP chapter of Introduction to Economics course. And in this part, I would like to talk a little bit on the value added method. Actually, I would like to show you the method numerically. Um, well, you might consider a country where basically there are three sectors, which might be mining sector, machine producers, and energy producers. And here in this country, we assume all of these sectors have a certain amount of inputs, which might be actually given from other sectors. For example, if $1,000, let's say, input cost of the machinery sector is produced by the miners, this $1,000 is part of the revenue of the miners. Remaining 500 is maybe asked to the foreign countries or maybe sold to the foreign countries, so it is not part of the output that is sold to the nation, to the country we are talking about. Or alternatively, well, in mining that doesn't exist, but for example, for the machines, part of the machines might be also used for the consumption. When we are calculating value added, it is very easy. We subtract from the revenue the input cost, and here we are pretty much talking about the raw materials or the intermediate goods. So for each case, we subtract from the revenues the input costs. And if these are the only three, let's say, sectors in the economy, when we add these to each other, we find the GDP. I mean, this would be the GDP of the country, 3,750 units of money. It could be $1 million or $1 billion. And here, all of these revenues are part of the value added. So, in the end, the value added by each sector is distributed to the active factors or owners of the active factors of production, which is workers, the people who get profits, the people who get rent, the people who get interest payment. Well, just briefly talking about the Marxian economics. In Marxian economics, the value can only be added by the labor, which means all other income is actually taken out of the value added by the workers, which is, according to Marxian economics, of course, exploitation. Part of the value added by the workers is taken from the workers in that framework. Here, the people, for example, the people who are owning capital, that capital is itself active in production. It is producing part of the value added. So now, since the owners of capital are also, I mean, their factor of production is also producing value, we don't have any more exploitation in Marxian sense. There can be some exploitation, but not under perfect market conditions, which is part of more advanced microeconomics. But in perfect market conditions, we assume that exists, that doesn't exist. So when you add up all of these incomes, then when you add up all of these ones, then you should basically get the value added. Which should be, by the way, a way to test whether we are doing right. Let's do that. And well, if this is wrong, that basically means that my numbers are wrong, which means I should correct these numbers at some places. So maybe let me see whether my numbers are so maybe let's make this, for example, 200. So I should make sure actually all of these numbers, when they are added, they will make up the revenue basically. So when I add up all these numbers, it should be equal to the revenue at the beginning, very beginning. Let's test it for the other ones actually. Yes, for them at least this is true. So the fact that the value added is distributed to all factors of production is actually as I said already told you, the logic of the aggregate income method. So since in each corporation, the value added in that corporation is distributed to the factors, the owners of the factors of production, and if the inputs are also basically produced in that country, basically their producers also have the value of those inputs covered as the revenue of their company, basically. So we don't need to count them again in that sense. We have already counted them when we are calculating the revenue, the value added of those companies that are producing those inputs, or at least adding values of those inputs. So when we adopt the income of everyone in that country, it should be equal to GDP in that sense. So to do that, for example, in this case, we might calculate aggregate wage. No, not here. I'm sorry. Let me read this. Aggregate wage, aggregate profit, aggregate rent, aggregate interest. This is all of them is sum of all interest revenue, all rent revenue, all profit revenue, all wage revenue in that country. So if we have these three sectors, we basically add up these three numbers. And you could also, if the numbers are too much, you can also use, is it Turkish? It's Turkish. That's sum, basically. I mean, in English, I am summing the values. So aggregate wages is 1,750 units. Aggregate profits for 450. Aggregate rent is 300. Aggregate interest is 1,250. If we add all of these to each other, again we get our GDP, which should be equal to the value added GDP. Since the value added is already, I mean, the sum of all income types in each sector. So instead of calculating value added for each sector, we have rather taken all wages distributed in every sector and added them up. All profits earned in each sector and added them up. So we have done the same type of calculation, but through a different path in that sense. So let's continue. I was almost saying, do you have a question? But of course I cannot answer the question, at least not in this video, before you listen to this lecture. So the third method is the aggregate expenditure method, and here basically, as I said, all available outputs are well, if you don't take the outputs that are basically produced from an outside country, they are equal to GDP. So basically, moment, let me open a sheet here where I can do some writing. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not the program I want. I want this program. I want white sheet. Okay. So my GDP plus my export, which let's say I'm using it as X, is the total amount of production in my country. So basically, I have my GDP, but I'm sending the export to foreign countries, so that those exports are not available to buy in that country. Plus, I am getting imports from foreign countries. So GDP minus X plus equal to all available value of all available output in the economic system, that people are able to buy, of course. And who buys those outputs? Part of it is bought for the consumption, to use by the people to basically get utility. Part of it is bought for investment. So for imports, let's say M It says I should to differentiate it from the investment, and then the part of it is bought by the government. But I want to calculate GDP, so I want to have my GDP alone, since that's the one I don't know, but I can calculate the total amount of consumption done in the economic system by calculating everything that's bought for consumption in the country. So I add C in I and G, all of which are available to me, plus X, since the sign will change, minus M. So I add exports and I subtract my imports. So that's this method. This equation here you see is another way to basically calculate GDP. And you see the equation also here, basically. And you can see also on this chart, basically, let me make it a little bit larger. You have, moment. Can I go a little bit down, maybe? Let's see if I can. I can. But not as long as I want. Okay, yes, it is. So households are from the markets, they got the consumer spending, they got the government from the market, government gets purchases, firms get investment, imports are sent, exports are bought, imports are sent. Well, exports are bought, imports are basically from the rest of the world, and imports are sold from the rest of the world. So this is how you got your expenditure method. And in case of income method, basically factors market, these are the factors that are contributing to the production. Wages and interest are earned from the financial markets. Of course, the companies get some initial revenue, but then send it back to them as interest. Well, this one is difficult to get, actually, the income method, because all factors of production are not taken together. But this using this chart, it's very easy to see the expenditure methods. Factors markets are actually active factors of production, and so wage, profit, rent, interest are basically sent to the household through these factor markets. But of course, actually, factors markets to some extent are also merging with the financial markets, but that merge is not here seeable. That's one thing here. So anyway, so this is the aggregate expenditure method. Can I make this smaller? I think I can. Okay. So, well, one thing that should be taken into account is, however, this when you calculate GDP. So, when you calculate GDP, basically, think that you produce 10 units of bread. This is quantity, let's say. Let's keep it bread. Let's say price of the bread is this year 20. So these breads basically will add up as 200 units of money to your GDP. Let's say in 2012. So let's say the quantity of bread in 2013 has become 12, but let's assume there is an inflation in the country, so the price has actually doubled. So in that case, it would seem as if the contribution of the production by bread has actually increased much more than 20% increase in actual quantity. So this problem is part of the problems in calculating GDP, and we will discuss this problem and maybe some other side problems in the next part of this lecture.